A very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. So today also we connect with our Tax Talk episode. And before we start, we would like to wish all of you a very, very happy New Year on behalf of Ranaweera Associates. So 2021, we all know, is a year of hope because 2020 has been a tough year for everyone. So we hope this year will be very beneficiary for you. And with that wish, we would like to start today's episode of Tax Talk. So, as you know, Tax Talk is brought to you by Ranaweera Associates and is always conducted by a senior tax consultant and managing partner of Ranaweera Associates, who is Mr. Athula Ranaweera. And his objective is to bring in knowledge to all of you who are connecting so that you get to know about the latest trends and what's happening about tax. So today we have a special topic like every year. Today we are going to talk about small and medium enterprises and their future. And basically with the 2021 budget proposals, the new budget, how the small and medium enterprises will be impacted. To start a session, let me invite Mr. Athula Ranaweera to take the floor. Good evening, Mr. Ranaweera.
Good evening, Mr. Yasas. Good day and good evening to everybody. Now, this is the first time we are meeting in the year 2021 with a live session. Now, as we are having only a limited time period of about 55 minutes, we will first start with the session. And first, we will talk why we are going to, why we have selected this topic.
Exactly. What I wanted to ask you also was, Mr. Ranaweera, that why small and medium enterprises? Why did you want to start there?
We thought of covering the small and medium enterprises because the small and medium enterprises, the SME sector, is very much important to the economy of Sri Lanka. Now, I managed to gather some information, but unfortunately, we don't have very latest updated information. But with the information available, the SME sector covers almost about 45% of the employment in Sri Lanka. Domestic employment, when we take, almost 45% covered in SME sector. Then, when we take the GDP, out of the GDP, almost 52% contributed by SME. Now, by seeing these figures, no doubt that it is so important for us to talk about the SME. That is one of the most important sector in the economy. Now, if you take but unfortunately, if you see this table given in this presentation, the export volumes, when we consider the export volumes, in a country like China, SME sector covers almost 43% of the exports. But unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, the SME sector covers only about 3% of the total exports. That means now we are in a very weak situation with relate. The SME is in a weak situation with relate to the export turnover, export volume. Therefore, we have to do various things to promote the SME to give more contribution towards the employment, gross domestic product, and the exports. Now, we will see, this is another table. Now, the nature of the entities. Now, when we take the SME sector covers sole proprietorship, sole entrepreneurs. Then it includes some partnerships. Then it includes self-employed professionals. People like us, self-employed professionals. Then partnership and limited liability companies. Now, when we take these individual sole proprietors, they cover almost 30% of it. Then self-employed people covers 25% of it. Then the balance, the limited liability companies and partnerships covers 45% of it. Now, that is the composition of SME by taking the nature of the business registrations. Now we'll see that is the introduction. Now, next step, I would like to talk little bit about these concessions. Yes, we'll cover that, no?
Sure, because I think it's quite important for everyone to know what
Yeah.
exactly are we getting as benefits, concessions from this new budget proposal.
Yeah. Now we'll see why SME sector is so important and the SME budget, how the SME sector is covered. Now, when we see the SME sector, now they are getting various tax concessions and other concessions. That not only the SME sector, any sector is getting some tax concessions and they are getting some support services and other resources from the government. Now, especially in this case, we'll cover these things with the SME. Now, tax concessions. What sort of tax concessions? Now, it may be income tax concessions, value-added tax concessions, ESC, NBT, tax policies, various tax policies. They change the tax policies to suit with the SME, to promote SME. Then tax amnesty proposals. A lot of us are happy with these tax amnesties. Therefore, we will talk about that also. Then, in addition to the tax concessions or tax promotions, there are some other benefits also. The government is providing various resources. It may be things like road network, harbors, airports, or any other things like that. Or it may be even service supplies, support service, consultancy services. Only problem now, these services, when we take the government services, what they are giving, especially for SME, mainly for SME, the services are there, the offer is there, but we are not, a lot of us are not utilizing these services. Therefore, now we should get the maximum benefit. We should obtain the maximum benefit of these services. Now we'll move forward the tax concession. We will now this our coverage is mainly on taxation. Therefore, we'll see the tax concessions. Now, first of all, as per our existing Inland Revenue Act, we will see what's a SME is as per the existing law. There's a definition for that. Actually, they have introduced this definition mainly to give a concessionary tax rate of 14% for SME. To give a concessionary tax rate of 14% for SME. Now, as per this definition, there are three main items. One is solely in Sri Lanka. The person who conducts the business solely in Sri Lanka, it has to be a business in Sri Lanka. But there's an exclusion part. I don't know why they have included this exclusion part. Other than individual who is engaged in providing professional services individually or partnership, being an individual who is professionally qualified. Unfortunately, the professionally qualified people are badly treated in this. Anyway, solely in Sri Lanka, that is important. Then the second important point, the person does not have an associate, that is an entity. Shouldn't have an associate, that is an entity. That is very much important. That means in a group company, you can't have this benefit. For group companies, you can't have this. Then the third requirement, the annual gross turnover is less than 500 million. If the annual turnover is more than 500 million, then it is considered as not as a SME. This definition is there in section 195 of the Inland Revenue Act, saying that I'll move forward. I think the introduction, Yasas, the introduction part is sufficient.
Definitely. So, yeah, I think the main thing is if we can get to know the concessions, that will be quite interesting and important.
Yeah, I'll move to the tax concessions. Now, when we are talking about the tax concessions, there are some concessions, as I mentioned, some concessions has already given. Some concessions have already given. And some concessions already given and legislated. Some concessions are already given without a legislation. And there are some concessions already proposed through the budget, but not activated yet. Now, we will cover all these three tax concessions. First, we'll see the things under the Inland Revenue Act number 24 of 2017. Now, before entering into the session, I would like to, for our better understanding, I would like to briefly explain the basics of income tax computation. This knowing the basics of income tax computation is very much important for us to understand the other things. Now, first we'll see the income tax computation method, how the income tax is computed. What we have to do is to apply the rate or rates on taxable income. First, we have to arrive the taxable income. Onto that, we have to apply either tax rate or applicable tax rates. Then here it talks about taxable income. We should know what is the taxable income. We'll see that taxable income, as per the Inland Revenue Act, it is the assessable income minus subtract qualifying payments and relief. These qualifying payments are given only to the individuals, and reliefs are open for individuals as well as other persons, any person. Then, this assessable income, as per the Inland Revenue Act, this assessable income comprises with four parts, four types of assessable income. One is assessable income from business, then assessable income from employment, investment, then assessable income from employment. Then there's another category called other. I have not included that here. Right. Now we'll first see how to arrive the assessable income from business, assessable income from investment, how to arrive. The methodology is we have to take the gross turnover, deduct allowable expenses. Now here the word allowable expenses is something to do with the Inland Revenue Act. The expenses which are allowable under Inland Revenue Act, not under the accounting, not recognized as accounting standard things. That's a separate thing. For tax purposes, we have, when we are preparing the financial statements, we apply the accounting standards. But for tax purposes, this expenses allowance comes under allowable expenses, mainly covered under section 11. But when we are reading the section 11, we have to read section 11 along with section 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 onward. That means in the case of business or investment, from the gross turnover, we can deduct the allowable expenses. But in the case of employment, we can't deduct the expenses. Therefore, in the case of employment, we have to take the gross employment income as the assessable income from that source. I'll move forward. Then, tax concessions through Inland Revenue Act, that is our topic. Concessionary IT rate, as I mentioned, for SME sector, there's a concessionary income tax rate of 14%. Then, with regard to the partnerships, we'll see in the case of partnership, what are the special things other than this general allowable expenses. In the case of partnerships, if a partner has given a loan to the partnership, the interest what you are paying on the loan, or if a partner is giving a service to the partnership and getting an income, the fee paying for that service is considered as an allowable expense of the partnership. When we are calculating partnership assessable income, we have to deduct, we have to allow loan interest of partners and service income, service fees paid to partners. This is a special thing. In the old Act, there were some differences, but in the new Act, under Section 53, it is well recognized. When you are preparing the accounts or tax computation of a partnership, you have to allow partners' loan interest into the partnership and partners' services to the partnership and the fee they are on. Right. Then research and development expenses, double deduction. When we take developing countries, this research and development is very much important, and the coaching is very much important. Now, this covers the research and development expenses to promote business entrepreneurs to spend money or launch various research and development activities. Government, through the Inland Revenue Act, they have given 200% expenditure deduction. Under the Section 11, you can deduct the actual expense. In addition to that, under Schedule 6, under Section 15 of the Inland Revenue Act, you can deduct another 100%. When we add these two, it is 200% deduction. Suppose you spent 1 million for research and development, whether it is revenue nature or capital nature, you can deduct 2 million for that year itself. Now, some researchers, we do a lot of researches where the benefit may spread over more than a year. That means capital nature. But no harm. You can claim in the year of making the expenditure. We consider that it is expenditure incurred in that year. Saying that, I would like to move to agriculture startup expenses. Of course, this was there in the old acts as well. Whether capital nature or revenue nature, all startup expenses which relate to the agriculture, like land opening, cultivation, purchase of livestock or poultry, maintaining, clearing tanks, ponds, or inland water for rearing of fish. All these are allowable for tax purposes. Actually, some of these things are capital nature, but in the year you incur it, considered as a revenue expenditure for that year and allow for tax purposes. But this may not be much important now because government announced that they are making the agricultural farming activity tax-free for 5 years, tax holiday for 5 years. Right. Now we'll move to next item, relaxation of non-companies from thin capitalization requirement. This thin capitalization, under thin capitalization section 18, for a company, when they are claiming the interest expenditure as a allowable expenditure, there's an upper limit. In the case of a company, we have to take the capital, state share capital and the equity, share capital and the reserves, that is the equity. In the case of a manufacturing company, you have to take 3 times of the equity. Any loan higher than 3 times of the equity, the interest thereon is not allowable. That means the interest is allowable on the loans only up to the 3 times of the equity. In the case of any other business, it is 4 times of the equity. That's a limitation, but limitation is not applicable for these sole proprietorships and partnerships. Then facility of claiming losses. This is another benefit. Sometimes when we start businesses and run these businesses, we might end up with losses. If we'll end up with losses, then there should be a way of enjoying the benefit of loss. It is given in this act. It says you can carry forward the loss for next taxable loss for next 6 years and set off again the taxable, that those years assessable income. From each assessable income you can deduct. Now the other benefit is advantage in this is, now there's a facility of claiming business losses even against investment income. Now suppose you have a loss in your business, tax loss in your business, then you can claim that business tax loss even against the investment income. But investment losses you can't set off against business losses, business profits. That you have to keep in mind. Then Next, as I mentioned, the existing law, under the existing law, the situation I explained. Now we should know under the proposals. Under proposals, what we have to do? Tax concession through recent government announcement. I'll cover that part also. Now, out of these things, some of these things may be budget proposals, or most of these things are the proposals given in last January, February area, that time period. Then VAT relaxation. Now, this VAT relaxation is a big relief for SME sector. Now, especially the second item in this, the threshold. Now, the VAT liable threshold, earlier it was 12 million a year, it is increased to 300 million a year. 12 million increased to 300 million per year. That means per quarter limit was 3 million and it increased to 75 million a quarter. Now, with this, with effect from 1st January 2020, with this, lot of SME sector are excluded from VAT liability. At the same, then there's an issue. Now, sometimes these SME people are purchasing various materials from bigger people who are liable for VAT. Now, in that case, the bigger people may be paying 15% VAT on that, the VAT liable people. Now, therefore, to give a relief for everybody, including the consumers, government reduced this VAT rate of 15% to 8%. Now, this reduction is beneficial to the consumers as well as intermediary manufacturers, especially who are in SME sector, because they can't claim input because they are not liable for, they are not registered for VAT because of this threshold increase. Now, in that case, the cost, additional cost they are on is not 15%, only 8%. Right. Then travel agents. Now, with this COVID situation, all leisure industry, travel industry, and is in a bad shape. Because of that, the government extended travel agents with VAT liability. That is effective from 1st April 2020. But these agents should be the agents who are registered with Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. Then ESC. ESC exempted with effect from 1st January 2020. Then NBT exempted from 1st January 2020. Then reduction of a few custom duties. Some custom duties government reduced. But on certain cases, they reduced the custom duty and introduced a cess. But I know in certain cases, the custom duty has come down from 15% to 7.5%, where they introduce a new cess of 15%. Ultimately, the total cost has gone up by 7.5%. But some items, it hasn't happened like that. Then the government has proposed to introduce a GST by amalgamating multiple taxes which are applicable on liquor, tobacco, vehicles, and certain agro-product importations. Agro-product importation, there are other taxes. And liquor, tobacco, vehicle, there are a lot of different taxes. Therefore, government is going to combine all these, amalgamate these taxes and introduce a one tax called GST. Then, persons now with this VAT, ESC and NBT, some people now they are not, especially VAT, because of this threshold increase, there are some entrepreneurs, the SME sector, who are not liable for that. Then ESC and NBT files of anybody. Now those things to be closed. Now therefore, there's a proposal that with effect from 1st January 2020 to close all these files. But before closing, if there are any arias things, you have to first clear these arias things and close the files with effect from 1st January 2020, because that is not liable anymore. Then I'll move forward. I'll cover mainly the income tax. removal of individuals. Now, this individuals is very much important for SME. Individual, sole proprietor or partner or director of a company. Individuals, tax exemption limit of 15 million on foreign services. Now, when an individual export services or provide services to a overseas party by visiting that country or while being in Sri Lanka, that is considered as some type of export of service. Therefore, the government as the government need foreign currency, as a country we need foreign currency. Therefore, there's a tax exemption. There was a tax exemption up to 15 million a year per individual. Now they propose to remove this limitation. As a result, now if you are getting even 100 million in 1 year, it is totally tax free from overseas party. But the only thing you have to bring through a banking channel. Then exempting agro-farming, IT, foreign services from income tax of any person, not only individual. Now any party, any person, if any person export foreign service or provide services in abroad, like construction service maybe, or while being in Sri Lanka provide some services, IT services, even local IT services, then agro-farming in Sri Lanka, all those are made tax exempted. Then for proprietors, partners, directors, and other employees, we'll just cover the tax liability of these people. Proprietors, that is an individual. Partners, individual. Director, an individual. And other employees, individuals. These individuals' tax benefits. I think it is worthwhile for us to talk on this matter. Increasing the individual's personal allowance up to 3 million per annum. Earlier, the personal allowance was only 500,000 rupees per annum. Now that 500,000 rupee increased to 3 million with effect from 1st January 2020. Then B, introduction of expenditure relief of 1.2 million per individual. For what? Health, medical expenses, local education, housing loan interest, approved pension scheme contributions, purchase of equity and security. Now, all these things, if you spend money for these things, per year, you can claim up to 1.2 million. Suppose in 1 year you spend, 2021 year you spend 1.5 million. Now in that case, you can claim only 1.2 million. Suppose you spend only 1 million, then you can claim only 1 million. The actual expenditure up to a maximum ceiling of 1.2 billion could be deducted. The amount is the total of these things, or the total cost on health, medical, and once we total up all those things up to 1.2 million. Now in this case, some of these items are capital nature items. Now approved pension scheme contribution, that means you are investing for a future benefit. It's a capital nature. Purchase of equity and security, that is to promote the share market and all. That is capital nature, but you get this investment relief. That's a big relief for an individual. Then widening of tax slabs and introduction of 3 tax rates. Now the tax slab, as I mentioned earlier, it is increased from 500,000 to 3 million. That's a big benefit. Then tax rates. Earlier we had different rates. Tax slabs of 3 million. Earlier we had 600,000 slabs. First 600,000 at the rate of 4%, next 600,000 at the rate of 8%. Likewise, 600,000 slabs were there. Now it is increased to 3 million slabs. Second thing, tax rate. Earlier we had 4%, 8%, 12%, 12%, 16%, 20 and 24. Now it made only 6%, 12% and 18%. That's a big benefit for individuals, including SME sector of the individual. Then concessions on terminal benefits. Now it is EPF, ETF, gratuity and all. Those are they introduced a system to reduce the tax amount. According to the new thing, first 10 million, no tax at all. Next 10 million, tax only at 6%. Balance tax at 12%. That's a huge benefit for the people who are retiring. Right. Then I'll talk a little bit about withholding tax as well. Now, most of the residents withholding taxes are removed, abolished. Now, as a result, now most of the withholding taxes which were there on residents are removed, except for a few like gem auction sales continue to be subject to tax at 2.5%. Then lottery winning and this the winning and that 10% is there. Now, a few are there, but majority of those are on residents. It is removed. Now, by removing this, there's a big freedom, business freedom. Now, I know a lot of people, the small people who were doing cleaning services and all, they had sole proprietorships and partnerships. They converted their sole proprietorships and partnerships to companies to get rid of this withholding tax deduction. Because they were telling that their profit margin was not even 5% to pay 5% as tax. Now, anyway, now the business freedom is there for you to start a business and do a business in a small scale. Then relaxing of withholding tax is also a big relief for this unpaid agency service. Now, businesses were acting as an agent to the government to collect this withholding tax and remit into the Inland Revenue Department, but they were not getting any fee for that service, free service. Therefore, this relief is a big relief for them. Then income tax relating to partnerships. Now we'll talk about the income tax relating to partnerships. That's a change. Now the change is, now here especially I have to highlight that even a joint venture is to be considered as a partnership as per the definition of partnership of the Inland Revenue Act. Right? Saying that changes the withholding tax of 8%, which was there on allocation, 8% on allocation of partnership profit is abolished and replaced with 6% a partnership tax. Earlier, 8% was there on allocation. Now that withholding tax is not there. In future, there's a 6% partnership tax. After giving 1 million relief, that means suppose the profit is 3 million, out of the profit of 3 million, we can deduct 1 million, that means the balance is 2 million. On 2 million, we have to apply 6%. This is effective from 1st January 2020. I think I have covered that area.
Yes, Mr. Ranaweera. So now, I mean, we talked about these concessions, but are there any tax breaks, anything of importance looking at the new proposal?
Yeah, we better talk on this also, whether the tax concessions or reliefs are newly proposed. Some of those things are already included, but the other things I will cover now. Especially, I'm explaining these things mainly connecting with SME. Now, the government has proposed to continue the tax policies for next 5 years. This is applicable for anybody. It is very important. Now, tax policies in a country, for a country's development, these tax policies should be a continuing tax policy. Shouldn't change every year. Along with the government changes, we shouldn't change it. Therefore, government announced that they will continue this tax policies for next 5 years. That's a good sign. Then concessions on VAT liability on products manufactured with materials exempted from import VAT. Now, certain materials are exempted from VAT, but once you utilize these materials and manufacture a product, the product is liable for VAT. Therefore, what the government proposes is to give some concession on such items. That's a good sign. Then introduction of cess on imports as a measure of promoting local manufacturing. Now, if there are any item which is manufacturing in locally, suppose somebody is importing the same item or substitute for that, the government is going to charge a high cess on that import to curtail the import. That's a good sign. Then import duty reduction on vehicle spare parts to promote the repairs and local assembly. Now it is the high time for us to assemble vehicles in Sri Lanka or manufacture vehicles in Sri Lanka. And get repair all our existing vehicles rather than importing new vehicles every day. Now for that, as a promotion, spare parts, they are going to reduce import duty. Then 7-year IT holiday, income tax holiday on boat manufacturing, good sign for fisheries activities. Then 5-year IT holiday for private professional training institutions, doubling their student number. If there's a vocational training institution and if they'll double their student base, then they can enjoy 5 years tax holiday. Then in establishing a special tax appeal court. Now at present we have Inland Revenue Department, next step is tax appeal commission, next step is appeal courts. Now that is not really tax appeal courts, therefore government is trying to introduce a separate appeal courts called termed as tax appeal court. Then a special tax appeal court. Then compulsory e-filing of income tax return of companies with effect from 1st April 2021. I think that is very important for the administration purposes. First, companies are mandatory, will be mandatory to file their returns on e-filing method with effect from 1st April 2021. Then release the interest income of welfare societies from income tax. That's a good sign. To simplify capital gains, now capital gain, there are a lot of issues with relate to calculating of the gain. Therefore, government is to introduce a mechanism for that. What they are trying to do is to take the higher of the sale price or the assessed value. I don't know who is going to assess it. Maybe the Inland Revenue Department or maybe the government valuers. Anyway, we have to wait for that. Out of these two, the higher value, on the higher value, government is going to charge a small tax. Definitely the 10% rate can't apply, then it may be 1%, 2%, I don't know what is the rate. Anyway, they are trying to charge a rate like that. Then 7-day tax holiday for all renewable energy projects. That's a very good sign, because in the case of renewable energy, if we not use that resource today, we can't use the same resource tomorrow. Tomorrow we are using the tomorrow's resources. Now, therefore, if we use the sun rays today, we can manufacture the electricity, produce electricity. But tomorrow, again another day. Therefore, in the case of renewable energy, which is free inputs, we should give various holidays and promote them. This is an area which is totally neglected during past period. Therefore, it is better to introduce this type of tax holidays. Then special commodity levy on importation of selected agricultural products. That is to secure the Sri Lankan agricultural industry import to be charged higher taxes. Tax amnesty for investment of non-tax paid money by entrepreneurs after paying 1%. Now, especially in these Asian countries, people are having, a lot of persons are having undeclared money for tax purposes. Then they are struggling to declare, they're struggling to invest these things. Now, when you are not declaring your income for tax purposes, there are limitations of showing these things, investing these things on a subsequent investment. Therefore, that is badly affecting to our economy. because people are reluctant of investment because of this fear. Now, to address that, government is announced that they are trying to give a tax or amnesty for those things. If an entrepreneur invests their black money, their tax unpaid money into a business, then government is not going to ask questions on that. They are not going to charge taxes for the past period, but you have to pay 1% tax on that amount. I think I have well covered that area. If you are having any questions at the end, you can ask the questions.
Yeah, I think yes, you covered about what small and medium enterprises are, what benefits or concessions they have, and also you talked about certain breaks and benefits. And it's good to know that the government has decided that they'll have a long-term perspective about taxing, and that would hopefully help more investment to this country. Is there any other benefits which are probably not direct tax concessions, but any other reliefs or anything that you would like to talk about, Mr. Anil?
Yes, that is the area what I want to cover next. Even I said that it is mainly concentrating on taxation. I thought of slightly cover the non-tax items also, just to make it a comprehensive session. I'll cover
Sure.
those things also, especially with relate to the SME. Right. 7% special loan scheme is proposed for Samurdhi beneficiaries for them to do some productive work rather than giving some benefits without pushing them for some production. Therefore, government thought of giving a space, offering some special loans of 7% interest rate loans to some of the beneficiaries. Now, for securities, government may arrange some security mechanism as well. Then the expenses on promoting women entrepreneurship. Now, when we take especially Asian countries, women entrepreneurship is very much important for our country, especially our country's development. If we'll see the microfinance industry, this is now a lot of microfinancing companies. They prefer to give these loans to the women entrepreneurs. I think this is a sector what we have to promote in the lower level. Therefore, they are trying to give some income tax relief for expenses you are meeting to promote women entrepreneurship. If you are making if a company, we'll say a big garment factory, is going to spend some money for women entrepreneurships to promote small people to have one or two machine and do small subcontract work. Then those expenses meeting by that big garment factory, they can claim it as a allowable expenditure for their taxation. That is what they are going to do. That's a good sign. Then introduction of COVID insurance scheme with a government contribution of 0.2% of the turnover of any business with more than 50 employees. If there's a business with more than 50 employees, we have to take the turnover of that company. Out of this turnover, 0.2%, not 2%, it is 0.2% of the turnover government is going to give as a contribution for a special insurance scheme for COVID situation. Then other businesses, small businesses, also they have considered retail and wholesale trading and hotels. Retail, wholesale trading and hotels having more than 5 employees also can enjoy this. That is the SME sector. It is better for them also to be benefited with that. Then contributory pension scheme for self-employed people above 65 years of age. Now, self-employees and sole proprietorships and partnership people are not getting any pension schemes. Therefore, government is going to government proposed to introduce a contributory pension scheme for those people. They are after 65 years of age, they will be getting the benefit out of this. Then new development bank. Now, as we know, we had some development banks at that time, but with today's situation, we don't have development banks. Now we had NDB, then we had DFCC. Now all those are moved towards the commercial banking. At the end, no development banks in Sri Lanka, active development banks in Sri Lanka. Therefore, government has recognized this situation, and they are introducing a new bank, a National Development Banking Corporation, by merging State Mortgage and Investment Bank, that is that housing bank, then Housing Development and Real Estate Limited, and regional development banks. They are going to merge these things and introduce a new bank for development activities. We hope and we pray that that will work out. Then additional 2 rupee per dollar for foreign exchange remittances by workers. Now, a lot of our people are working abroad and sending their money. If these people send their money through a banking channel, then they'll be getting 2 rupee extra per dollar. Suppose today's buying rate is 190, then these people will get 192. Startup capital loans of 500,000 at 4% to young men and women who completed vocational education with a tax exemption of 5 years. Now, it is always better to have vocational educational facilities, but it is useless to have only the education, vocational education, but follow-up action is very much important. Now, then there should be support services for them to start their own businesses. For that only they have introduced this startup capital loans of 500,000. They are going to give a capital loan of 500,000 at the rate of 4% to young people who they have completed vocational education. At the same time, they are trying to give 5 years tax holiday on that. Then amend the Public Utilities Commission Act and Ceylon Electricity Board Act to allow rapid implementation of power projects. Now, power sector is one of the most important sectors neglected in Sri Lanka. When you take recent past years, most of the especially renewable power generating projects couldn't get their approvals due to various barriers. Because when you are obtaining the approval for a project like that, you have to beg for almost about 16 governmental institutions. You have to go behind them. Now, one institute might object it. Then even all 15 institutions okay, but ultimately you might end up with one institute, especially like water related, irrigation, then wildlife, forest. Those are the government departments which are making lot of limitations. Therefore, especially the electricity board also, CB. Therefore, government has luckily recognized this weakness, and for that, they are trying to amend the Public Utilities Commission Act and CEB Act. Hope that will work out, because the renewable energy is an area, as I mentioned earlier, also no cost on raw materials. Now, when CEB is in a position to buy electricity, solar, we will say in the range of 12 rupees to 22 rupees. Roof solar may be 22, but other solar as per tenders, it may be average of 12 rupees, 13 rupees. Sometimes the electricity board is buying electricity, thermal electricity, at the rate of 45 rupees even. or maybe more than that. Therefore, we have to activate this proposal as early as possible. Then import of dairy cattle. Now, when you are running a dairy farm, you have to import cattle. Better to import high breeds and distribute among farmers. Then import limitation on agricultural commodities, that is to secure the local market. Then capital grants of 150,000 to 10,000 to small and medium scale commercial agro entrepreneurs to install solar powered water pumps. Now, rather than using the national grid electricity or thermal petroleum products, better to make use this solar power. For that, government is going to give 150,000 rupee grant for these agricultural enterprise. Then custom duty relief and financing facilities to obtain land and modern equipment for investing in value additions to local crops. Now, local crop, the biggest problem is the low harvest and low value added activities. To promote that, they have introduced this to reduce the custom duties on certain imports. Then free fertilizer for paddy. Now, government is providing free fertilizer for paddy. At the same time, they are proposing to give 50 kilogram bag of fertilizer at 1,500 rupees for other crops. I think this is not one. It has to be when they are buying fertilizer for other crops. It has to be at 1,500 rupees per 50 kilogram bag. Any number of bags for that. I think saying that, I think I have already covered the main area of my session.
Great, Mr. Anir. I think it's quite encouraging also to see that there are other non-tax concessions or reliefs that are coming in, and hopefully we hope that kind of things will implement in terms of establishing a more greener policy of the country and supporting the small and medium businesses and like you rightly said, the female entrepreneurs and the micro finance industry. Maybe since we have a little more time, I'll just have one question. Now, I think people who have benefited from the COVID, like the moratorium benefit, now it's time for payback. Probably they would have finished the initial 6 months period, and now it's time for paying. In your experience, because you work with a lot of small and medium businesses, you consult for many companies, do you see any problems? Do you find out that companies, whether they are performing and whether they are having any concerns, or are they paying back the moratorium? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, actually, now, Mr. Asas, as you mentioned, this is an area which you have to address. Now, government is giving various concessions for entrepreneurs. But it is useless to give only these concessions. The follow-up action is very much important. It is very much required. Now, the government is giving this 4% loan. This 4% is a very low loan. But sometimes these entrepreneur, very small level people may not be having sufficient knowledge and experience of handling this money. Therefore, some people may be using this money for not for the purpose, maybe for different things, maybe for consumption. Therefore, always it is better for us to give support services, guidance, and coaching for these people to make use of this money for the purpose. Then only after 6 months time period, they can start repaying, because they have to repay these things with 4% interest within another 1.5 years time. The 6 months has passed, that means another 1.5 years time they have to repay. Therefore, this coaching is, as you mentioned, the coaching is very much important.
Great, Ms. Ranaweera. So I think we had another interesting session, and I think for all our viewers who are connecting, we need to tell them that very soon we will have another session. And can you kind of give them what you're going to talk about in the next session?
Yeah, actually, we are planning to have one session about uh, tip scheme. This is with relate to the industries who are importing raw materials for manufacture products for export market, temporary import for export purpose. And there are a lot of limitations and a lot of barriers in this, but still is in work for so many years, but still there are loopholes. Therefore, we are going to cover that area. Then, in addition to these timely topics, we are planning to have we have launched the educational sessions also. Those are pre-recorded small video clips. We may be having almost about 70, 75, 80 video clips to educate the tax laws in Sri Lanka, mainly for students or anybody who are learning for taxation.
Great. So it's quite interesting and encouraging to see all the things that you are doing. So we strongly request everyone who's watching to follow us on Facebook. You can go and search for Ranaweera Associates, and you can find the Facebook page. If you are especially connecting through YouTube, if you are connecting through Facebook, search for Tax Talk on YouTube, and you will find uh, this channel, so you can watch back some of the previous sessions we had. So the request is keep following us. Once again, we wish all of you a very happy new year. Keep following, because Tax Talk by Ranaweera Associates and Mr. Athula Ranaweera will have a lot of things, lot of education, and please feel free to contact them if you need any tax consultation or any support, because he's one of the most well-known people, and his knowledge is very vast when it comes to tax and related areas. So once again, Mr. Ranaweera, thank you very much for having a very good session with us, and we hope to connect with another interesting session once again very soon.
Okay,
Good
thank you,
evening.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.